My daughter got sick from a doll we found, but we threw out the wrong one. I used to think the worst sound in the world was my daughter crying. I was wrong. Zora had the kind of constitution you could set a watch to. She was all boundless energy, scraped knees, and a voice that could shatter glass with sheer enthusiasm. So when the quiet started, I noticed. When the light in her eyes started to dim, I felt it in my bones. It all began the day we brought that thing home. It was bulk trash day in our neighborhood, the weekly roadside exhibition of suburban decay. Sagging couches, water-stained mattresses, towers of broken electronics. But one pile was different. It had a bright red pushcar, and next to it, propped up against a bag of lawn clippings, was a doll. It was one of those old porcelain dolls, maybe 2 feet tall. It had a cascade of honey blonde ringlets that had gone dusty and gray with time. Its face was a mask of placid innocence, but the paint on its lips was chipped into a permanent, unnerving smirk. It wore a tattered dress of peach-colored lace, the kind of elaborate thing you see in faded photographs. "Mama, look," Zora whispered from the back seat, her face pressed to the window. "They're throwing her away." "Looks like it, sweet pea. Can we have her, please? She looks so lonely." I slowed the car, a familiar exhaustion settling over me. I hate curb picking. You never know the story. Bedbugs, black mold, mice. Or worse. The logical part of my brain was screaming every possible health code violation at me, but then Zora's lower lip began to tremble, and 2 fat tears traced clean paths through the grime on her cheeks. I know. You don't reward a tantrum, you set boundaries. But it had been a 14-hour shift. My head was throbbing with the promise of a migraine, and frankly, I didn't have the energy for a fight. I pulled over. The doll was heavier than I expected, cold and solid in my hands. I buckled it into the back seat next to Zora. "Her name is Ondine," Zora declared, already stroking its matted hair. "And she's going to be best friends with Patch." That night, after a thorough cleaning with antiseptic wipes that did little to lift the musty smell from its dress, Ondine was officially welcomed into the family. I could hear Zora's soft whispers from her room as she introduced her new friend to Patch, a well-loved rag doll with button eyes and yarn hair that I'd sewn for her myself. "This is my bed, Ondine. Patch is very nice. You'll like him. Good night, Ondine. Don't have bad dreams." Later, I peeked in on her. Zora was fast asleep, her small chest rising and falling rhythmically. In the little wicker doll bed, where Patch usually slept, Ondine was tucked in neatly, the blanket pulled up to her chin. Her glass eyes, a pale, washed-out blue, were wide open. I paused in the doorway. I could have sworn the doll's eyes were closed when I saw it on the curb. I shook my head. It was late. I was tired. I closed the door and chalked it up to a trick of the light. Ondine went everywhere with Zora. The grocery store, the park, the bathtub, Patch was forgotten, left on a shelf to collect dust. I couldn't understand the attraction. Ondine's porcelain face was subtly cracked near her hairline, a web of tiny fissures you could only see up close. Her dress smelled like a damp basement, and there was a strange reddish-brown stain on the hem that I couldn't scrub out. Her painted-on smile seemed to widen when you weren't looking directly at it. And then Zora got sick. It started about a week after Ondine arrived. I woke to a choked, wet cough from her room. I found her tangled in her sheets, her forehead slick with sweat. "My tummy feels wrong," she whimpered, just before she was violently ill all over her comforter. I assumed it was the stomach flu. I held her hair back, cleaned her up, and spent the rest of the night dozing in the rocking chair in her room, listening to her ragged breathing. But it didn't go away. The fever would break and then return. She'd have a good day, eating and playing, and then a bad one, where she was pale and listless, complaining of a twisting pain in her stomach. Doctors ran tests. Blood work came back normal. "It's probably just a persistent virus," they'd say, with a shrug that made my blood boil. One night, around 3 a.m., I woke up because the house was too quiet. A primal instinct screamed that something was wrong. I crept to Zora's room and pushed open the door. She wasn't in her bed. My heart seized. I scanned the moonlit room, and then I saw her. She was huddled in the corner, her knees pulled to her chest. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with a terror I had never seen before. She didn't say a word. She just slowly raised a trembling finger and pointed at her bed. Ondine was sitting bolt upright against the pillows, not slumped over the way a doll should be. Her posture was perfect. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, and her pale blue eyes were fixed directly on me. In the dim light, I swear I saw that chipped smile twitch. That was it. The connection clicked into place with the force of a gunshot. None of this started until the doll. It had to be mold. Some toxic fungus deep in the stuffing, or lead in the paint. I was poisoning my own daughter. After Zora was safely asleep in my bed, I marched back into her room, snatched Ondine from the bed, and locked it in the hall closet. I felt like a monster, letting her sleep with that thing, breathe it in every single night. The next morning, when I checked on Zora, she was still asleep in my bed. I went to her room to get her clothes, and my breath caught in my throat. Ondine was sitting in the wicker doll bed, her eyes wide and staring, tucked in, just like before. It was impossible. Zora hadn't left my side. I tried the garage, the trunk of my car, the basement chest freezer. Each time, by morning, the doll was back in Zora's room. She was just a kid, but she was finding it. She had to be. I decided I had to be ruthless. I waited until the night before trash pickup. At 2 a.m, I took Ondine, put her in a black garbage bag, tied it shut, then put that bag inside another. I buried the bag at the very bottom of our outdoor bin, under a week's worth of kitchen trash and junk mail. I watched from the window at dawn as the garbage truck came, its mechanical arm lifting the bin and dumping the contents into its compactor with a deafening crunch. Gone. Finally, gone. The relief was so immense, it almost brought me to my knees. Zora cried for Ondine for 2 days straight, a heartbreaking, gut-wrenching wail that made me question everything. But on the 3rd day, she stopped. She picked up Patch from the shelf, hugged him tightly, and it was like a cloud had lifted. But she didn't get better. In fact, she got worse. The nausea was constant. She was losing weight at an alarming rate, her clothes hanging off her tiny frame. The shadows under her eyes were so dark, they looked like bruises. Getting rid of Ondine hadn't done a thing. My hope curdled into a cold, hard knot of dread in my stomach. Was I losing my mind? Had it ever been the doll? Then, last night, the screaming started. It wasn't a sick cry. It was a scream of pure, unadulterated terror. I flew out of bed and down the hall, my heart hammering against my ribs. I burst into her room and froze. The bed was empty. The moonlight streaming through the window cast a single, long shadow across the floor. Zora was pressed flat against the far wall, as far away from her bed as she could get. Her eyes were fixed on it. She saw me, and a tiny sob escaped her lips. "Shh," she breathed. And then I saw it. It was Patch, my Patch, the doll I had made with my own 2 hands. He was standing on Zora's pillow, not propped up, not leaning. Standing, on his own 2 feet. His yarn hair seemed to bristle, and his black button eyes, usually so flat and lifeless, seemed to glint with a wet, malevolent light. One of his stitch-felt arms was raised, and clutched in his little hand were Zora's small, silver-tipped craft scissors. I scooped Zora into my arms, her body trembling like a leaf, and backed out of the room, slamming the door shut. We barricaded ourselves in my bedroom, a heavy dresser pushed against the door. "He's mad," she cried into my shoulder, her voice muffled and hysterical. "He's mad you threw her away. He told me. He said it was his turn. This morning, when the sun came up, I opened her door." Patch was lying on the floor, limp and harmless, the scissors on the rug beside him. He looked like any other toy, but I knew better. I didn't cut him up. I took him to the backyard, threw him in the barbecue pit, doused him in lighter fluid, and struck a match. I watched until the felt skin peeled back and the plastic buttons melted and the stuffing inside turned black and then to ash. The smell was acrid and sickening. I sound insane. I know I do. But when I went back inside, Zora was in the kitchen, eating a piece of toast. She looked up at me and smiled, a real smile. The first one I'd seen in weeks. All her toys are in garbage bags in the garage now. Every last one. I don't think I'll ever be able to look at a doll again without feeling that cold dread creep up my spine. Because the worst sound in the world isn't your daughter crying. It's the sound of her whispering to something in the dark and hearing it whisper back,